My name is Susan Rogers. I'm 31 years old. And 3 months ago, I sat in my car outside a bank in Columbus, Ohio, holding a statement that showed my college fund had been emptied 6 years before I ever turned 18. Not drained slowly. Not borrowed against. Emptied. One transaction. One signature. One name on the withdrawal line that wasn't mine. My parents called that same week. They needed help with the mortgage. They were 3 months behind. My father's voice had that particular tightness he gets when he needs something but doesn't want to admit it. "Your mother and I have been struggling," he said. "We just need a bridge." That's the word he used. Bridge. I sat in that car for 40 minutes before I drove home. Before I tell you what I said when I called them back, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story means something to you. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I want to know where you're listening from tonight. Now let me take you back to where this started. Not the phone call, not the bank statement, further back than that. Back to the version of me that believed the fund existed because my grandmother said so. Grandma Rosie was the kind of woman who kept her word like it was the only currency she trusted. She grew up with nothing in rural Tennessee, built something modest and honest, and spent the last decade of her life making sure her grandchildren had a start she never got. She told me when I was 14, sitting at her kitchen table while she rolled biscuit dough, that she had set aside money for my education. Not a fortune. Enough. Enough to cover 2 years of community college and transfer to a 4-year program without drowning in loans. Enough to mean I had options. She looked at me over that biscuit dough and said, "Nobody can touch it but you, baby. It's in your name." She died when I was 16. I cried for 3 weeks. I kept her words about the fund in a small, careful place in my mind, the way you keep something you're not ready to look at directly yet. I didn't ask about it. I trusted it was there because Grandma Rosie said it was there, and Grandma Rosie didn't lie. My parents knew I trusted it. I think that's the part I've had to sit with the longest. When I graduated high school, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table, same table where a lot of things in our family got decided without my input, and told me the fund was gone. Not stolen. Gone. She used the word gone like it was weather, like something that just happened. There were expenses, she said. The roof needed replacing. My father's truck broke down twice. There was a period where the business wasn't doing well. I remember the specific way she folded her hands when she said it. Neat, deliberate, the way you fold your hands when you've rehearsed the conversation and you're waiting to see which version of it you're going to need. I asked how much was in the account. She told me. $14,000. I did the math later. The roof replacement they'd mentioned to neighbors cost $9,000. The truck repairs were documented in old receipts I found in a drawer 2 years after that conversation. $3,600 total. I never found evidence of anything else. $14,000 had become a roof and a truck and $4,400 that went somewhere I couldn't trace. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of her. I said okay and went to my room and sat on my bed until the feeling in my chest stopped being sharp and started being something duller and more permanent. That was the last time I asked about it for 7 years. Let me be honest about what the next few years actually looked like, because this isn't a story with a clean montage. There was no swelling music. There was community college on a payment plan and a waitressing job and a used Honda with 200,000 miles on it that I coaxed through 3 Ohio winters on prayer and cheap motor oil. I took out loans for the years the fund would have covered. Small ones, the kind you tell yourself you'll pay off quickly, that grow slower than you expect and sit heavier than you plan for. I moved into a studio apartment at 19 with a roommate who worked nights, so we almost never overlapped. I learned to cook exactly 6 meals well. I got good at being invisible at family gatherings because invisible meant no one asked why I wasn't further along, why I was still at the community college, why I hadn't transferred yet. My younger brother Rob got a car for his 18th birthday. A used one, but a car. My parents didn't mention the fund when they handed him the keys. I didn't mention it either. That silence cost me something I didn't have a name for until much later. But here's what silence also gave me. The first morning I woke up in that studio apartment and realized no one was going to tell me I wasn't enough that day. No voice in the kitchen making the air feel smaller. No casual comparisons dressed up as concern. Just the sound of the city outside my window and the specific, terrifying freedom of having only myself to disappoint. I decided that morning I was going to be very difficult to disappoint. I finished my associate's degree in accounting, not because it was my dream, because numbers don't lie, and I had developed a particular attachment to things that don't lie. I transferred to Ohio State on a partial scholarship I'd spent 8 months applying for. I worked 25 hours a week through both years. I graduated with a 3.8 GPA and a job offer from a mid-size firm in Columbus before I walked across the stage. My parents came to graduation. My mother cried. My father shook my hand and said he always knew I'd figure it out. I smiled and took photographs and did not say what I was thinking. I was thinking about the biscuit dough, about Grandma Rosie's hands, about $14,000 that became a roof and a truck and a number I couldn't account for. I was thinking about the word figure it out and what it cost to figure it out when the foundation you were supposed to stand on had already been spent. But I was also thinking about my starting salary, which was more than my father had ever made in a year, and the fact that I had gotten there without a single dollar of help from the people who owed me the most. That felt like something, not enough, but something. The next 4 years I built quietly. A promotion at 2 years, a senior associate title at 4, a 1-bedroom apartment with a window that faced the city and a savings account I added to every month without exception. I paid off my loans ahead of schedule. I did not call my parents often. I showed up at Christmas and Thanksgiving because absence felt like a conversation I wasn't ready to have and presence felt like practice for something I couldn't name yet. My mother asked me once if I was seeing anyone. I said I was focused on work. She nodded in a way that meant she had opinions and had decided not to share them, which was its own kind of gift. Rob got married at 24. I was in the wedding. I smiled in photographs and did not say anything about the car or the fund or the $4,400 I could never account for. I was still practicing. Then 6 months ago, I was reviewing my own financial records for a client meeting, the way you sometimes use personal paperwork to test a process before applying it professionally, and I pulled up an old document I had never fully examined. A letter from Grandma Rosie's estate attorney, sent to my parents the month after she died, confirming the transfer of the education account into a joint custodial structure pending my 18th birthday. The account had $14,260 in it at the time of transfer. And the attorney's name was on the letterhead. I called him on a Tuesday afternoon from my office with the door closed. He was semi-retired. He remembered Grandma Rosie immediately and without prompting. He told me the account had been liquidated by the custodians, my parents, before I turned 18. He had sent a follow-up letter at the time raising concerns. He had received no response. He paused on the phone. Then he said, "I'm sorry, Susan, I should have done more." I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat in my office for a long time looking at the Columbus skyline through my window. The roof, the truck, the $4,400. My parents hadn't borrowed from the fund in an emergency. They had emptied it and said nothing until I asked, and when I asked, they told me it was gone like it was weather, like something that just happened, like $14,000 of my grandmother's intentions had simply evaporated. They had known exactly what they were doing. They had just counted on me not knowing how to prove it. I want to pause here for a second, because I know what some of you are thinking. She's 31. The money is gone. The statute of limitations on financial stuff like this is long past. What's the point of finding the letter now? The point is that for 7 years I had been carrying a story that wasn't fully true. The story I was carrying said my parents made a hard choice in a hard time, and the money was collateral damage. The letter said something different. The letter said they liquidated the account, ignored the attorney's concerns, and handed me a rehearsed explanation when I was 18 years old and had nowhere to go and no way to push back. The point isn't legal. The point is that I finally understood the full architecture of what happened. And once you see the architecture, you can't unsee it. The phone call came 1 week later. My father's voice, the tight version, 3 months behind on the mortgage, just a bridge. I sat in my car outside the bank where I'd gone to pull up the statement myself and verify what the letter said. I had the document in my hand. I had the attorney's name. I had the date of the liquidation. I sat there for 40 minutes. Then I drove home, made dinner, and called my father back the next morning. Here's what I said, not a speech, not an accusation, 4 sentences. I found Grandma Rosie's attorney's letter. I know when the account was liquidated, and I know you received a follow-up inquiry you didn't respond to. I'm not able to help with the mortgage. I hope you find another way through. My father was quiet for a long time. Then he said they had needed the money, that it was a different time, that they always intended to replace it. I said I understood. He asked if we could talk about it in person. I said I needed time. He asked how much time. I said I wasn't sure. My mother called that evening. Her voice had the soft version of the performance, the one that sounds like vulnerability but functions like pressure. She said she knew I was hurt. She said families make difficult decisions. She said she hoped I could find a way to understand that they did their best. I said I heard her. I said I would call when I was ready. I haven't called since. That was 3 months ago. Rob called 2 weeks after my parents did. He didn't know about the fund. I believe that. He knew they were behind on the mortgage, and he knew I'd said no, and he wanted to understand why. He wasn't angry. He was confused in the way younger siblings get confused when the family story they've been living in turns out to have a version they weren't given. I told him everything. The letter, the attorney, the date of the liquidation, the follow-up inquiry that went unanswered. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The car." I didn't say anything. "They bought me a car," he said, "when I turned 18. I still didn't say anything. He exhaled. "Susan, I'm sorry, I didn't know." I told him I knew he didn't know. I told him it wasn't his to carry. He said he needed to think. I said take all the time you need. He called back 4 days later and said he was going to help them with 1 month's mortgage, one time, and then he was done covering for a situation he hadn't created. He said it plainly, the way people talk when something has just become clear to them and the clarity is uncomfortable but real. I told him he didn't owe me anything for that. He said he knew. He did it anyway. I don't know what happens with my parents and the mortgage. That's not my story to carry anymore. What I know is that for 7 years I told myself the most charitable version of what happened, because the alternative required admitting that the people who were supposed to protect my future had looked at it and made a different choice. I'm not angry in the way I expected to be. I thought finding the letter would make me furious. Instead, it made me tired in a specific, clarifying way. The kind of tired that comes when you've been holding something heavy for a long time and you finally understand that you're allowed to set it down. Grandma Rosie set aside $14,000 for my future. My parents spent it and handed me a rehearsed explanation and called it weather. I built the future anyway, slower and harder, and with more debt than I should have had. And when my salary became visible to them, the first thing they reached for was my account number. I changed my account number, not out of anger, out of clarity. The attorney's letter is in a folder in my filing cabinet. I don't look at it often. I don't need to. I know what it says. I know what it means. And I know that my grandmother's intentions for my life did not disappear when my parents spent the money. They just took a longer road to get here. I got here, Grandma. It took longer than it should have, but I got here.